We won the lottery. A few years ago, we used to live in a very small flat in a very poor area. We were used to living with very little. We didn't used to have good furniture or a good TV. And of course, we didn't used to know what it was to have an internet connection. In our neighborhood, the streets used to be dark and dirty, and there used to be a lot of robberies. Then we won the lottery and everything changed for us. We bought a new flat in a very nice area of the city where we have been living for the last 3 years. We got used to sleeping in comfy beds and eating good food very quickly, but it wasn't so easy to get used to the people. They are the kind of people who don't usually talk to each other, and they are used to getting everything very easily. We share the same neighborhood, but we don't share the same values.
I am used to living in the UK. We moved to London 10 years ago, and after 10 years, I can say I am used to living in the UK. However, coming from Peru, it took me some time to get used to being in a country which is so different from my motherland. In Peru, we used to talk to the people in the street, the people we met on the bus, in the shops, in the park, etc. Here, it was very difficult to speak to anybody, and not because of the language. Before we came, I was used to speaking English every day because back in Peru, I used to be an English teacher. So the language was not the problem. It was just that the people here mind their own business. They don't normally speak to strangers. But now I have already got used to minding my own business. The other thing which was completely different was the weather. In Peru, we used to be outdoors all day because it used to be hot and sunny. When we came here, we had to get used to being mostly indoors because the weather is horrible. Now, after 10 years here, I think we are used to wearing thick clothes and we don't mind the rainy weather as much as we did in the past, but I'll always miss the weather in Peru.
Winters used to be rather cold. When I was a child, we used to live in a cabin in the mountains. Back then, we didn't used to have much money. That's why we used to have vegetables and chickens in our back garden. Every day we would get up very early, and my father would take some eggs for breakfast. The weather in summer used to be really nice. There was a lake near the house. We would go there to have a swim every morning. Later in the afternoon, my brothers and I would go fishing, and in the evening my mother would cook whatever we had caught. It was fantastic. Winters used to be rather cold. Every morning I would go to the woods to look for firewood. There used to be a little fireplace in the house to keep us warm. In the evenings, my father would tell us incredible stories next to that fireplace, and we would listen full of admiration. We were poor, but we used to be happy.
We had never been to London before. A long time ago, my first wife and I decided to go on a trip to London for a few days. Before the trip, we were very excited because we had never been to London before. We wanted to visit Miguel, a close friend who had moved to Britain for work and who had been working in London for a couple of months. He was very homesick because he still didn't have any friends in England, and Laura and I wanted to pay him a visit to cheer him up a bit. However, Miguel told us we had to stay in a hotel because he was renting a room in a shared flat and we couldn't stay in his home. Back then, when my ex-wife and I traveled anywhere, we used to book hotel rooms well in advance, and we used to check hotel reviews on TripAdvisor every time. But this time, we had been very busy the weeks before the trip, so a few days before the trip, we decided that we would look for a hotel once in London. Unfortunately, hotel rooms in London are quite popular in August, and several hours after our arrival in the big capital, we still hadn't found a room in any affordable place. Eventually, we found a hotel which, surprisingly, was well located and not very expensive, but we soon discovered why there were available rooms in that so well located hotel. To start with, the room number was a scribble written on a sheet of paper that someone had hung on the door with sellotape, and once you were in, the room was dirty and horribly smelly. It looked as if nobody had cleaned it for ages. In the bathroom, there was no mirror. The toilet was clogged, and there were lots of hairs in the basin. It was so disgusting that we decided to pay for a much more expensive room in a much less well-located hotel, and we ended up as depressed as our good friend Miguel.